Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Have you ever thought about why some people keep moving forward in life, no matter how many failures they face, while others give up after just one setback? Two people can have the same education, the same opportunities, and even the same talent, yet their lives turn out completely different. One becomes confident, successful, and unstoppable, while the other stays trapped in self-doubt for years. At first glance, it feels like luck, but according to Psycho-Cybernetics, the real difference is something much deeper: the image they carry about themselves inside their own mind. Most people think their actions create their identity, but the book explains the opposite. Your identity creates your actions. If deep down you see yourself as weak, awkward, unlucky, or incapable, your mind will constantly push you to act in ways that match that image. Even when opportunities appear in front of you, you will unconsciously avoid them because your inner self-image does not believe you deserve success. That is why some people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. Think about it for a second. Have you ever prepared for something important, but at the last moment your confidence suddenly disappeared? Maybe during a conversation, an exam, a business opportunity, or even while trying to improve your life. It is not because you lacked ability. It is because your self-image was stronger than your desire. Your mind always tries to stay consistent with the person you believe you are. The most powerful idea in Psycho-Cybernetics is that the self-image is not permanent. It is learned, and if it was learned, it can also be changed. Maxwell Maltz discovered this while working as a plastic surgeon. Some patients completely transformed their lives after changing their appearance, while others still felt insecure even after surgery. That is when he realized the real problem was not the face in the mirror, but the picture inside the mind. The moment you start changing that internal picture, your behavior slowly changes with it. Confidence becomes natural. Opportunities stop feeling scary. You begin taking actions that once felt impossible. And over time, your entire life starts aligning with the new version of yourself that you repeatedly imagine and believe in. Have you ever thought about why your mind keeps pulling you towards certain results, even when you consciously want something completely different? It almost feels as if there is an invisible system inside you, constantly directing your actions, emotions, and decisions without your permission. According to Psycho-Cybernetics, that invisible system already exists. Maxwell Maltz describes the human mind as a goal-seeking machine, almost like a guided missile that automatically moves toward the target it has been given. The strange part is that your mind does not care whether the target is positive or negative. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you are a failure, awkward around people, unlucky in life, or incapable of success, your subconscious mind accepts that as the destination. Then, without you even noticing, your behavior starts guiding you toward experiences that confirm those beliefs. You hesitate during opportunities, overthink simple decisions, avoid risks, and eventually create the exact life you feared in the first place. But the same mechanism can also work in your favor. When you clearly define a goal and emotionally connect yourself to it, your mind begins searching for ways to make it real. Suddenly, ideas appear more often. Your focus sharpens. You notice opportunities you ignored before. Problems that once looked impossible start feeling manageable. It is not magic. Your brain simply begins filtering reality differently because it now has a destination to move toward. Think about how a GPS works. If you enter no destination, the system cannot guide you anywhere. In the same way, most people live without a clear mental target. They wake up, react to problems, scroll endlessly, compare themselves to others, and repeat the same routine every day. Then they wonder why their life never changes. A goal-seeking machine without a goal only moves in circles. That is why clarity becomes so important. The book explains that vague desires create vague results. Saying, "I want a better life," is not enough. Your mind responds more powerfully to detailed pictures. The clearer the target, the easier it becomes for your subconscious system to organize your actions around it. And this is where everything starts to change. The moment you consciously choose a direction, instead of living on autopilot, your mind slowly becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Instead of dragging you backward through fear and doubt, It starts pushing you toward growth, confidence, and the future you repeatedly imagine inside your head. Your brain is far more powerful than you think, but the problem is that most people unknowingly use that power against themselves every single day. One of the most shocking ideas in psycho-cybernetics is that the human mind often cannot clearly distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. In other words, the pictures you repeatedly create inside your head slowly begin shaping the way your brain reacts to reality. Think about fear for a moment. A person can sit safely in their room and still feel anxious just by imagining failure, rejection, embarrassment, or danger. Their heartbeat increases, their muscles tighten, and stress takes over the body even though nothing has actually happened. Why? Because the brain responds to the mental image as if it were real. The imagination becomes a signal, and the body follows it automatically. Now imagine using that same mechanism in a positive direction. Athletes mentally rehearse victories before competitions. Public speakers visualize successful performances before stepping onto the stage. Successful people often imagine themselves already becoming the person they want to be, long before the results appear in real life. They are training the brain to become familiar with success instead of fear. Maxwell Maltz explains that your subconscious mind works through images and emotional impressions. Whatever picture you repeatedly feed into your mind eventually starts influencing your behavior. If you constantly imagine yourself failing, your actions become hesitant and uncertain. But if you repeatedly imagine confidence, growth, and success, your mind slowly begins adjusting your reactions to match that image. This is why visualization is not just positive thinking. It is mental conditioning. Your brain is always learning from repetition, whether the images are helpful or destructive. Most people unknowingly rehearse negative scenarios every day. They imagine worst-case situations before even trying. They relive embarrassing memories again and again. Over time, those mental movies become part of their identity. But the moment you consciously control those inner images, everything begins shifting. Instead of mentally practicing failure, you start mentally practicing success. Instead of seeing yourself as weak, you begin seeing yourself as capable. And little by little, your mind starts treating that new version of you as normal. The biggest battle in life is often not outside of you, but inside your imagination. Because the pictures you repeatedly hold in your mind today are quietly creating the person you become tomorrow. Most people believe their personality is something they were simply born with. They say things like, "I'm just not confident," "I'm not good with people," or "success is not meant for someone like me." But Psycho-Cybernetics explains that many of these beliefs are not facts at all. They are mental programs created over years of experiences, failures, criticism, and emotional conditioning. And after repeating those ideas long enough, people stop questioning them. They begin treating them as their identity. A child is not born believing they are weak, unattractive, unintelligent, or incapable. Those beliefs are slowly built through repeated experiences. Maybe someone was constantly criticized growing up. Maybe they failed publicly once and never emotionally recovered from it. Maybe they were compared to others so often that they started feeling inferior without even realizing it. Over time, the mind collects these emotional moments and turns them into conclusions about who you are. The dangerous part is that once a belief becomes connected to identity, the brain starts defending it. Even if new opportunities appear, the person unconsciously avoids them because succeeding would conflict with the identity they have accepted. That is why some people stay stuck for years, even when they desperately want change. Their conscious desires move them forward, but their subconscious identity keeps pulling them backward. Think about someone who secretly believes they are not worthy of success. Even if they get a great opportunity, they may procrastinate, hesitate, overthink, or quit too early. On the surface, it looks like laziness or lack of discipline, but deep down it is often an identity problem. Their mind is trying to stay loyal to the version of themselves they already believe in. Maxwell Maltz explains that changing behavior becomes easier when you first change the belief behind the behavior. Instead of constantly fighting yourself, you create a new internal identity. You stop saying, "I'm trying to become confident," and slowly begin seeing yourself as someone who already has confidence growing inside them. That subtle shift changes the way you think, act, and respond to life. The truth is, many limits people carry are invisible. They exist only because the mind accepted them years ago without question. And once you realize that beliefs are learned rather than permanent, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as trapped by your past and start understanding that your identity can be rebuilt, one thought, one action, and one new belief at a time. Success looks mysterious from the outside. When people see someone achieving great things, they often assume that person was simply luckier, smarter, or naturally gifted. But Psycho-Cybernetics presents a completely different idea. According to Maxwell Maltz, success is not an accident. It is the result of an internal mechanism working correctly over time. Just like a machine follows instructions to reach a destination, the human mind also follows the directions it is repeatedly given. The problem is that most people misunderstand success completely. They think success comes first and confidence comes later. In reality, the process often works in reverse. Your mind needs evidence that success is possible before it fully supports your actions. That evidence is created through small wins, repeated effort, and mental conditioning. Every successful action, no matter how small, sends a message to your subconscious mind saying, "This is who I am becoming." Think about learning how to ride a bicycle. In the beginning, your movements are awkward and uncertain. You fall repeatedly, lose balance, and feel frustrated. But your brain slowly learns through feedback. Each mistake becomes information instead of proof of failure. Eventually, balance becomes automatic. Success in life works in a very similar way. The brain improves through correction, repetition, and adjustment. Maxwell Maltz believed that the success mechanism inside humans naturally moves toward solutions when given the right target. But many people interrupt this process by constantly criticizing themselves. The moment they make a mistake, they label themselves as failures instead of treating failure as feedback. Over time, this destroys confidence and weakens the mind's ability to move forward naturally. Successful people often appear calm under pressure because they trust this internal mechanism. They know they do not need to control every single outcome perfectly. Instead, they focus on the process, make adjustments when necessary, and continue moving toward the goal. Their confidence comes from repeated experience, not from perfection. Another powerful idea from the book is that action itself creates momentum. Waiting to feel ready usually keeps people trapped forever. The success mechanism activates through movement. The more constructive actions you take, the more your mind starts believing in your ability to succeed. And once the brain begins associating action with positive outcomes, confidence grows naturally. Success is not built in one giant moment. It is built quietly through repeated thoughts, repeated behaviors, and repeated decisions that slowly train your mind to work for you instead of against you. And over time, those small internal changes begin creating massive external results. Failure rarely happens in a single moment. Most of the time, it begins quietly inside the mind, long before it appears in real life. Psycho-Cybernetics explains that just as humans possess a success mechanism, they also develop a failure mechanism when negative thoughts and emotions are repeated often enough. And the dangerous part is that many people activate this system without even realizing it. Think about how often people expect the worst before anything even happens. They imagine rejection before speaking, failure before trying, embarrassment before taking action, and disappointment before chasing opportunities. Over time, these repeated mental patterns train the brain to operate from fear instead of confidence. The mind becomes so focused on avoiding pain that it stops moving toward growth altogether. Maxwell Maltz believed that emotions like insecurity, guilt, fear, and self-hatred act like internal blocks inside the success mechanism. Instead of helping you move toward your goals, the mind begins protecting you from imagined danger. That is why people procrastinate even when they know what they should do. Deep down, their subconscious mind associates action with emotional discomfort, so avoidance starts feeling safer than progress. One of the most destructive parts of the failure mechanism is self-sabotage. A person may consciously want success, but subconsciously feel unworthy of it. So whenever opportunities appear, they unknowingly ruin them through overthinking, hesitation, excuses, or quitting too early. Then, when failure happens, it strengthens the negative identity they already believed about themselves. It becomes a painful cycle, repeating itself again and again. The book also explains how excessive worry damages clear thinking. When the mind becomes overloaded with fear and tension, decision-making weakens. Small problems start looking massive. Confidence disappears. People begin reacting emotionally instead of rationally. In many cases, the fear of failure becomes more damaging than failure itself. But one of the most important lessons in psycho-cybernetics is that failure is not a permanent identity. The brain can be retrained. Negative conditioning can be replaced. Just because your mind learned fear in the past does not mean it must control your future forever. The first step is awareness. Once you recognize destructive mental habits, you stop treating them as truth. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," you begin understanding, "This is a pattern I learned," and patterns can be changed. The failure mechanism only grows stronger when repeated unconsciously. The moment you interrupt those negative cycles and begin feeding your mind healthier thoughts, actions, and emotional experiences, the system slowly starts shifting. Little by little, fear loses control, and growth becomes possible again. Visualization sounds simple on the surface, but according to Psycho-Cybernetics, it is one of the most powerful tools for changing human behavior. Maxwell Maltz explains that the mind constantly responds to mental pictures, whether those pictures are positive or negative. The problem is that most people use visualization unconsciously. They spend hours imagining failure, rejection, embarrassment, and worst-case scenarios without realizing they are mentally training themselves for fear. Think about how often people replay painful moments in their head, a mistake from the past, an awkward conversation, or a failure they cannot forget. Even though the event is over, the brain keeps experiencing it again and again through imagination. Over time, those repeated mental images strengthen insecurity and self-doubt. The mind begins treating those negative experiences as proof of identity. But visualization can also work in the opposite direction. Instead of rehearsing fear, you can begin rehearsing success. Athletes have used this technique for years. Before competitions, many mentally practice every movement in detail. They imagine themselves performing with confidence, staying calm under pressure, and succeeding before the event even begins. This mental rehearsal helps the brain become familiar with the experience, making it easier to perform in real life. Maxwell Maltz believed that the subconscious mind responds strongly to vivid emotional imagery. When you repeatedly imagine yourself acting confidently, speaking clearly, or achieving your goals, the brain slowly starts accepting that image as normal, and once something feels normal internally, your external behavior begins aligning with it naturally. The key is consistency. Visualization is not about fantasizing once and expecting your entire life to change overnight. It is about repeatedly feeding the mind constructive images until they slowly replace old, negative patterns. Just like negative thinking becomes stronger through repetition, positive mental conditioning also becomes stronger over time. The book also emphasizes the importance of emotional involvement during visualization. Simply seeing an image is not enough. You must feel the experience as realistically as possible. Imagine the confidence, calmness, excitement, and certainty connected to the goal. The stronger the emotional impression, the deeper it reaches the subconscious mind. Many people wait for confidence before taking action. But Psycho-Cybernetics teaches that confidence is often created internally first. Visualization helps build that internal foundation. It trains your mind to stop seeing success as unfamiliar or impossible. And the more familiar success feels inside your imagination, the easier it becomes to move toward it in reality. Because eventually, your actions begin matching the mental picture you have practiced often enough to believe. Most people think hard work alone is enough to achieve success, but Psycho-Cybernetics explains that the state of your mind matters just as much as the effort you put in. When the mind is constantly filled with tension, anxiety, and pressure, it becomes difficult to think clearly or perform naturally. That is why many people fail, not because they lack ability, but because they are mentally exhausted by fear and overthinking. Maxwell Maltz believed that human beings perform best when they are relaxed rather than emotionally strained. Think about moments when you became overly nervous before something important, maybe during an interview, an exam, or a conversation. Suddenly, simple tasks started feeling difficult. Your thoughts became confused, your body felt tense, and your confidence disappeared. The pressure itself became the problem. The book explains that the subconscious mind functions more effectively when the body and mind are calm. Creativity improves, decision-making becomes clearer, and actions feel more natural. But when fear takes control, the mind shifts into survival mode. Instead of focusing on solutions, it becomes obsessed with avoiding mistakes. That is why anxiety often causes people to underperform, even when they are fully capable. One of the most powerful ideas in psycho-cybernetics is that relaxation is not laziness. It is mental control. Relaxation allows the mind to operate without unnecessary emotional interference. Successful people are not always fearless, but many of them learn how to stay calm under pressure instead of panicking emotionally. Maxwell Maltz suggested simple methods to reduce inattention, such as slowing down mentally, practicing quiet reflection, and learning to release excessive worry. Even small moments of calmness can help reset the nervous system and improve mental clarity. The goal is not to eliminate all stress from life, but to stop living in a constant state of internal pressure. Many people unknowingly create problems by trying too hard to control every outcome. They overanalyze every possibility until their confidence collapses. But the more relaxed and focused the mind becomes, the easier it is for the success mechanism to function naturally. True confidence often grows in calmness, not chaos. Because when the mind is relaxed, you stop fighting yourself internally. And once that inner conflict disappears, your natural abilities begin expressing themselves far more powerfully than before. Negative thoughts are dangerous not because they appear once in a while, but because many people repeat them so often that they slowly become part of their identity. Psycho-Cybernetics explains that the human mind absorbs repeated thoughts like instructions. Whatever you continuously tell yourself eventually influences your emotions, behavior, and expectations about life. That is why uncontrolled negative thinking can quietly shape an entire future without a person even noticing it. Most people do not realize how much they talk against themselves internally. They constantly think things like, "I always fail," "I'm not attractive enough," "Nobody respects me," or "I'll never succeed." At first, these may seem like temporary emotional reactions, but when repeated daily, the subconscious mind begins accepting them as facts. And once the mind believes something strongly enough, it starts creating behaviors that support those beliefs. Maxwell Maltz believed that one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to fight negative thoughts emotionally. The harder they struggle against them, the more attention those thoughts receive. Instead of constantly battling negativity, the book suggests replacing destructive mental patterns with healthier ones. The mind cannot remain empty for long. If you remove negative thoughts without introducing better ones, the old patterns usually return. This is why mental discipline becomes so important. Every thought acts like a seed planted inside the subconscious mind. Positive thoughts may feel weak at first because the brain is already conditioned toward negativity. But through repetition, new patterns slowly begin forming. Over time, the emotional power of negative thinking decreases. The book also emphasizes the importance of refusing to define yourself by temporary emotions. Feeling fear does not mean you are weak. Feeling nervous does not mean you are incapable. Thoughts and emotions constantly change, but many people mistakenly turn passing feelings into permanent identities. One practical lesson from Psycho-Cybernetics is learning to observe your thoughts instead of instantly believing them. The moment you become aware of destructive inner dialogue, you create distance between yourself and the negativity. Instead of unconsciously obeying every thought, you begin choosing which thoughts deserve your attention. Changing your life often begins by changing the conversations happening inside your own head. Because eventually the words you repeat internally become the reality your mind starts expecting externally. And when healthier thoughts are repeated consistently enough, the brain slowly begins creating a healthier version of you. Confidence is often misunderstood as something people are either born with or without. Some individuals appear naturally fearless, while others struggle with insecurity for years. But Psycho-Cybernetics presents a very different perspective. Maxwell Maltz explains that confidence is not a magical personality trait. It is a learned response built through repeated experiences, mental conditioning, and the way a person sees themselves internally. One reason people lose confidence so easily is because they connect their entire identity to temporary failures. A single rejection, mistake, or embarrassing moment becomes emotional proof that they are not good enough. Over time, these painful experiences build a negative self-image, and the mind starts expecting failure before taking action. The person becomes trapped in hesitation and self-doubt. But confidence grows the same way fear grows, through repetition. Every small success sends a signal to the subconscious mind that progress is possible. That is why Maxwell Maltz believed in the importance of small wins. When people repeatedly complete positive actions, even simple ones, the brain slowly begins building a stronger self-image. Confidence becomes the result of experience rather than motivation. The book also introduces the powerful act as if principle. This does not mean pretending to be fake or arrogant. It means practicing the behaviors of the person you want to become before you fully feel ready. If you want confidence, you begin speaking, thinking, and acting with slightly more courage than your fear wants you to. Over time, the brain adapts to those actions and starts accepting them as normal. Think about someone learning to speak publicly. In the beginning, they may feel nervous every single time, but after repeated exposure, the fear slowly decreases. The confidence did not appear first. The actions came first, and confidence developed through experience afterward. Maxwell Maltz also explains that perfection is not required for confidence. Many people wait until they feel completely ready before taking action, but that moment rarely comes. Confident people are not always certain of success. They simply trust themselves enough to keep moving forward despite uncertainty. The more evidence you give your mind that you can handle challenges, the stronger your confidence becomes. And eventually, the identity of being insecure starts fading because your brain no longer sees fear as your natural state. Real confidence is not built overnight. It is built quietly through repeated actions that teach your mind you are more capable than you once believed. Most people try to change their lives by relying on motivation, but motivation is temporary. Some days you feel inspired and ready to improve, while other days even simple tasks feel difficult. Psycho-Cybernetics explains that lasting transformation does not come from short bursts of motivation. It comes from habits, because eventually the things you repeatedly do become stronger than the goals you simply think about. Maxwell Maltz believed that habits are deeply connected to self-image. People naturally act in ways that feel consistent with the identity they carry inside their minds. That is why changing habits can feel so difficult at first. If someone secretly believes they are lazy, undisciplined, or incapable, their brain will constantly pull them back toward old behaviors, even when they genuinely want change. Think about how automatic most daily actions already are. People wake up the same way, think the same thoughts, react emotionally in the same patterns, and repeat similar routines every day without much conscious effort. Habits slowly become mental programs. The brain prefers familiar behaviors because they require less energy and feel emotionally safe. This is why forcing massive change overnight usually fails. The subconscious mind resists sudden shifts that conflict with existing identity patterns. Instead, Psycho-Cybernetics encourages gradual reprogramming through repeated small actions. Every positive habit, no matter how small, becomes evidence that a new version of yourself is being created. For example, a person trying to become healthier does not instantly transform through one workout or one healthy meal. But repeated daily actions slowly change the way they see themselves. At some point, they stop feeling like someone trying to get healthy and begin identifying as a healthy person. Once identity changes, maintaining the habit becomes much easier. The book also emphasizes the importance of consistency over perfection. Many people quit after making mistakes because they think failure destroys progress. But habits are built through repetition, not flawless performance. Missing one day matters far less than completely giving up. Another important idea is that the brain learns through emotional reinforcement. When positive habits are connected with progress, confidence, and personal growth, the subconscious mind becomes more willing to repeat them. Slowly, the new behavior starts feeling natural instead of forced. Real transformation often looks boring in the beginning because it happens quietly through repeated actions nobody notices. But over time, those small habits reshape your identity, your mindset, and eventually your entire life. Because in the end, people do not become what they wish for occasionally. They become what they repeatedly practice every single day. One of the biggest reasons people stay trapped in the same life for years is because they refuse to emotionally let go of the past. Psycho-Cybernetics explains that many individuals unconsciously carry old failures, embarrassing moments, regrets, and painful memories like permanent labels attached to their identity. Even when life offers them a new opportunity, their mind keeps dragging them back toward experiences that should have been left behind long ago. Think about how often people define themselves using past mistakes. Someone fails once and starts believing they are a failure. Someone experiences rejection and begins assuming they are unworthy. A painful memory happens years ago, yet the emotional effect continues controlling decisions in the present. The event may be over, but mentally the person keeps reliving it again and again. Maxwell Maltz believed this constant attachment to past failures damages the self-image deeply. The subconscious mind does not care whether the experience happened yesterday or 10 years ago. If you continuously replay negative memories emotionally, your brain keeps treating them as active parts of your identity. Over time, this creates fear, hesitation, and insecurity in situations that have nothing to do with the original experience. The book teaches that mistakes should be treated as lessons rather than permanent definitions. Failure is information, not identity. Every successful person has made mistakes, looked foolish at times, and faced setbacks. The difference is that they refuse to build their entire self-image around those moments. Letting go does not mean pretending painful experiences never happened. It means refusing to allow them to control your future forever. Many people unconsciously punish themselves for years because of guilt, regret, or self-hatred. They believe they must carry emotional pain as proof that the past mattered, but holding on to suffering does not change what happened. It only weakens the ability to move forward. Maxwell Maltz also explains that the human mind has the ability to create a new emotional relationship with the past. Instead of viewing old failures as proof of weakness, you can begin seeing them as part of growth. The meaning attached to a memory matters more than the memory itself. The moment you stop identifying with your worst moments, something powerful begins changing internally. Your mind slowly becomes open to new possibilities again. Confidence returns little by little. Opportunities stop feeling impossible, because your future is not supposed to be controlled by an older version of yourself who knew less, feared more, and had not yet grown into the person you are capable of becoming today. Real transformation does not happen in a single motivational moment. It happens through a daily system that slowly reshapes the way you think, act, and see yourself. That is one of the biggest lessons from Psycho-Cybernetics. Your mind is constantly being programmed, either by random habits and negative thoughts, or by conscious actions that move you toward growth. The direction of your life often depends on which process you repeat more consistently. Most people wait for a dramatic change before they finally believe in themselves, but Maxwell Maltz explains that the process usually works the other way around. You begin changing your thoughts, habits, and mental images first, and then your external life slowly follows. Small daily actions may not feel powerful in the moment, but over time they completely reshape your identity. Imagine spending just a few minutes every day visualizing the person you want to become, calmly seeing yourself confident, disciplined, focused, and successful. Then imagine backing those mental pictures with real action, even if the steps are small. Day after day, your subconscious mind starts accepting that version of you as normal. Fear loses strength, doubt slowly fades, and actions that once felt difficult begin feeling natural. The book teaches that the mind works best when it has clear direction, emotional balance, and repeated positive reinforcement. That is why transformation is not about forcing yourself aggressively every single day. It is about creating systems that gradually train your brain to support your goals instead of resisting them. Some days progress will feel slow, some days old fears may return. But growth is never perfectly linear. The important thing is continuing the process long enough for the new self-image to become stronger than the old one. Because once your internal identity changes, your behavior naturally begins changing with it. At the end of the day, the biggest battle most people face is not against the world. It is against the version of themselves they have carried in their mind for years. And the moment you start consciously rebuilding that image, your entire life can begin moving in a completely different direction. So, if this video helped you understand the hidden power of your mind a little better, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Richmind Audiobook, and share it with someone who truly needs to hear this message. Because sometimes, a single shift in thinking can completely change the direction of a person's life.